Hi, Mercedes Kirkel. Welcome to this interview with Miriam Agency. I am Eva, and I'm very much excited about this interview and about sharing your work with the world, because I think it's very important what you do for me personally, but also for many, many people. In my experience, the knowledge that you work with and the gifts that you have to share are really something. And you work with real transformation. And I have to say that working with you is not for the faint-hearted, because it brings a lot of change for people. And that is something that Miriam Agency is very much interested in. And it's also the reason that we bring you to Holland this summer to do some programs in Holland with us. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you came to do your work with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene?
Sure. And first off, I want to say thank you very much for this time together and for interviewing me.
You're welcome.
So my story is quite a long one, and I have it in my books, and it's on my website too, so people can go there and hear the whole story. But the short version begins when I was living in Hawaii, and this was 2009. And at this time, I was feeling that my life was about to change, and I wanted it to change. I was invoking that my work would change and would become very specifically about doing spiritual work. And I had a feeling this was going to involve channeling, but I felt like I didn't know how to channel. And so I started praying, and I prayed for 9 months that if this is what I was meant to do, and this was really my work, that I would be given everything I needed to be able to do that. And in the midst of that period, at the end of 2009, I got a message from Spirit that I was to leave the Big Island of Hawaii. Now, I had been living there for 10 years at this point. I loved it. I thought this was my home for the rest of my life, and I was not happy about this message. So I checked it out 3 times to make sure I was hearing it right, but that's what I was really being told. It stayed consistent, so I said yes, I would do this, because I had seen from many times of receiving messages from Spirit that when I followed them, things always worked out for the best, often in ways I couldn't understand or know beforehand. So I said yes. And I took a few months, packed up my life, and the message hadn't told me where to go. So it just said, leave the Big Island.
That sounds exciting.
For me, it was kind of confusing. I didn't quite know what I was supposed to do. So I thought, okay, I'll go visit my family on the mainland. I haven't seen them for a while, the mainland US. So I went back to visit my family. It turned out that my parents were both going through some issues relative to aging and needing some help. And I don't know if they had really recognized what was going on, and that they certainly hadn't communicated it to me, so I hadn't been aware. When I came back and saw what was happening with them, I was so glad to be back and knew that I could help. So I spent the next 4 months helping my parents. And periodically during this time, I would ask Spirit, okay, Spirit, where's my new home? Where am I supposed to be living now? And I got nothing, absolutely nothing. And so I just said, okay, well, I know what I'm supposed to do right now. It's very obvious. I'm supposed to be helping my parents, and just do that. So I did. And at the end of 4 months, I had done everything that I could see to do at that time to help my parents. And right at that time, I started getting the messages and the guidance again. And it guided me to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And when I arrived in Santa Fe, all the signs were there. There was light streaming down from the sky. It was like the red carpet had rolled out and the orchestra was swelling, and everything looked like the golden city that I had arrived to. And I knew, okay, I get it. This is where I'm supposed to be. And immediately I was literally given everything that I needed, including a place to live and just every kind of help. And on what I think was the third day when I was there, I was meditating, and all of a sudden I felt a presence all around me, and it was especially strong at my throat, and it felt very benign, and I had this feeling like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is what I've been waiting for, and I was so excited. And I had a feeling I was blocking it, that this feeling of in my throat was an actual block I was encountering. And so I put all my intention on releasing whatever blockage was there in me to this presence coming through. And all of a sudden, a voice started speaking through me out loud, different from my own. And internally, as the voice started, I had the message, this is the voice of Mary Magdalene. And she proceeded to give an amazing message, which is now in the first book, Mary Magdalene Beckons. It's the very first message from Mary in that book. And I was just completely blown away because it was such an awesome, profound message with such far-reaching truth that she was delivering. And also because I could feel her presence so strongly, and I was just dissolved in love. It was this incredible meeting with Mary Magdalene. So at the end, she finished, and I felt like I was just in a puddle. And then I had a thought, and the thought was, I'm not going to remember this. And that was completely unacceptable to me. I knew already that this needed to go out to all of humanity, anyone who wanted to have access to this amazing information. So without a moment's hesitation, I said to her, would you let me go get my computer and then give me that message again so I can type it into my computer? It happened so fast, I didn't even have time to think, gee, that was awfully presumptuous that I was asking that of her. But there was no other thought, just I need to record this. And she said, yes. And I went and got the computer, and I'm a very fast typist. And she gave the entire message again, identical to the first time, which I could not have done. I could not have recreated that message. And I typed it in. And that allowed me to record it, but even more, it absolutely confirmed for me that this was real, that I wasn't making this up, and that this was in fact Mary Magdalene.
Yeah. It is a very beautiful confirmation to have her repeat the whole message again.
Absolutely. And it was very important for me because this was the beginning of me ever having channeled, and I immediately went into doubt that this was real, that I was making it up, whatever. And so it was very significant for me personally.
To have this confirmation.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I loved your books, but your books have also been very well received in America. And you've gotten multiple awards for them. But also a lot of spiritual leaders in the field, they responded very positive to your books.
Yes.
And that's very wonderful. What do you think makes your books, Mary Magdalene Beckons and Sublime Union, so enchanting and important for people?
Well, Mary Magdalene and now Yeshua, because they work together now through me, which is more wonderful. If there's anything more wonderful than Mary Magdalene coming through, it's Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that name, that's the Aramaic name for Jesus, Yeshua. The work that they do through me seems to me very connected to what has been passed down to us of the work that they were doing when they were incarnated, that they are helping us with our spiritual growth. And to me, that's what's so special about it. They're not talking about themselves. They're not talking about their lives 2,000 years ago. It's very, very practical, hands-on. This is what you need to grow. to experience what we experience, which is this ecstasy of love communion with God. And that to me is what's so special, and that it absolutely works. And it's very, very practical instruction. Mary Magdalene in the first book and even continued into the second book, very much focusing on the practical things we need to grow and fulfill around our emotions, our body, and our sexuality. So practical. And in order for us to live in our hearts. And that's another hallmark of their teaching, that it's not this airy-fairy, you know, tune into the crystalline this or the pink that. It's really practical transformation.
Yeah. That's something that I have experienced very vividly working with you and reading the books. It's pure transformation. And I love that about this. It's about, yeah, I think they are continuing their teachings like they were doing when they were alive here on planet Earth.
That is definitely my sense. And what I've seen is that it's powerfully effective. It absolutely works for anyone who wants to apply it. This is serious spirituality. It's not just thinking about spirituality. It's not just listening to a message periodically that lifts you up, but that doesn't necessarily go any further. This is really digging deep into ourselves for transformation.
Yes, thank you. That's beautiful. So for people who are not so familiar with Mary Magdalene and the work that you are doing and Yeshua, if you were going to describe Mary Magdalene's core message in a few sentences for people, what would it be?
Well, I realize when you say for people who aren't so familiar with Mary Magdalene, the first thing that's really important to clarify is who Mary Magdalene is, because a lot of people confuse her with the woman known as Mother Mary, Jesus's mother in the Bible. And there are even theories that they're the same person. And I don't know whether that's accurate or not. But if you look at them as two different people, Mary Magdalene was the follower of Yeshua, who was referenced many times in the Bible, and who many people believe, including myself, and based on the messages that she's given me, that she was in a sacred relationship with Yeshua, and that wasn't communicated through the Bible, or perhaps it originally was and got cut out at a certain point, but that they were actually partners, and not only partners, but co-teachers. And she said in the very first message that they both knew that it would be 2,000 years before the world was ready to receive her in her role as equal to Yeshua. And this is the time now. And this is one of the reasons why many people are finding a connection with Mary Magdalene. It's this groundswell that's happening of people connecting with her in so many ways, which I didn't know about until I connected with her and then started telling people about what's happening to me. And all of a sudden I started to get huge numbers of stories back about people telling me all the ways she's coming to them, and that they don't tell anyone, they just keep it to themselves. But since I understand, you know, they've told me, and it's a beautiful, beautiful process that's very alive in our time right now.
It's definitely like that, and I've seen this for myself as well, and I'm also a person like that who had this kind of awakening, and then I went searching, and then I found you, and it was very much connected to the divine feminine. And it's also very related to my next question, because we hear a lot of people talking about the awakening of the divine feminine, and like you said, it's like it's getting more and more, and I'm hearing about it more and more. And what do you think of this personally, and what is your own experience to this in this regard?
Yes, well, For many people, and this has been a movement, I think it goes back even to the awakening of feminism back in the 60s. And then out of that, the divine feminine awakening, and women having this longing for connection with their divine nature as a woman, as a feminine being. And for many women, this is taken the form of getting in touch with what often is called the goddess energy. And this can look like, you know, dressing up in goddessy clothes and doing more goddessy activities like dancing and getting into pleasure and expressing pleasure, certainly sacred sexuality. All of these are arenas that I think many women have been exploring and opening to, you know, this longing for more of the feminine energy. And I think Mary's teaching is definitely coming out, you know, it's very connected to that. And that's a part within Mary's teaching that she would definitely support and encourage. But her teaching is much broader than that in terms of she's really teaching about the inner feminine. And this is inner feminine regardless of gender, that we all have our inner masculine and inner feminine. So her teaching really applies to everyone relative to strengthening and fulfilling their inner feminine. And what she says is that for most of us at this time, we're quite out of balance, that our training and our culture has very much supported the development of our masculine nature, and the feminine has been not only not developed, but suppressed. And this is, you know, historically for the past few thousand years. So most of us are aware of this, and yet I don't think we realize how deep this goes within each one of us and how deeply entrenched this suppression of the feminine is. And she has identified 3 primary areas that she says are the foundation of the feminine within all of us. And those areas are our physical body, our energy system, which includes our sexuality, and our emotions. And if you think about it, these are the areas that most of us have the most problems in relationship to. 1, 2, or all 3 relative to our body, our sexuality and energy, and our emotions. And she says these are the foundation of the feminine. And when we talk about suppression of the feminine, this is what we're fundamentally talking about, is the suppression of the sacredness, the magnificence of our bodies, our sexuality, and our emotions, and the importance of them, the absolute essentialness of those areas for us as divine beings. And so her work is about fulfilling those areas as the foundation so that we can move into our mature manifestation of the divine feminine, which is seated in our heart. And she says those 3, the one that would make the most difference for most people is relative to emotions. And specifically the way that we relate to emotional pain. She says, most of us don't have a problem with pleasure, with happy feelings, joyful feelings, although sometimes we, you know, that can be, has certain challenges. But for most of us, the real area that we have trouble with is the painful emotions, sadness, fear, anger, and all the subtle, you know, variations on those. And she says, this is the area that if we were to get strong, she said, we as humans were intended to be emotional masters. We are lagging behind. Emotional masters relative to more than just the earth, the universe. This is one of our roles in the universal system.
So we have some work to do.
We have some work to do. And so that was her very first focus, because she said if we do nothing else, this would do more to move us ahead spiritually than anything else, this emotional work.
Yeah, well, I've experienced this very profoundly myself, and especially in regards to the painful emotions that you're talking about or referring to. And by reading your books, I was really touched to the core of my being. But one thing that was really profound for me was the message of Mary Magdalene about pain. And because pain was for me something that I would rather avoid, like many people. Like, oh, I feel this here, and then moving away from it and using all kinds of distractions to not having to, not needing to feel it. And well, what Mary taught me in the book, Mary Magdalene Beckens, is that I can see my pain as a gateway to God. And that if I embrace it and go through it, then there is transformation, profound transformation. And so I've been experiencing this in working with you and reading the books. And at this moment, I'm less afraid of my own pain. I am very much more able to embrace it and to be able to go through it. And I always come out on the other side, and it's always lighter, and there's nothing really to be so afraid of.
Yes.
And what I've also experienced, that I'm less afraid of the pain of other people.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not so uncomfortable with the pain of other people. And I find that very, it gives me a very good feeling to be able to sit with somebody who is in pain and not needing to cover it up or change it or just be with it.
Yes. One of the biggest differences that she brings to us relative to emotional pain is the understanding that pain is a message. It's a communicator. It's telling us that we've gotten disconnected from God. So the problem is not the pain. The pain is getting our attention so that we can address this and get reconnected with God. And that in fact, the pain is part of what we can use if we have the tools. And this is part of what she gives, are these wonderful tools.
Yes.
Can learn how to use the pain as a very clear guidance system that will guide us to that exact place where we've gotten disconnected and make it easy for us to reconnect.
Yeah.
And so it's really our helper. It's helping us to get out of the pain, to even know that we're in pain. And the pain is not the emotional pain, the pain, the disconnection from God, the true source. And that it's also helping us to change that so that we can reconnect.
It's very beautiful. I love that very much. I would like to read my favorite passage from the book. And in this passage, she is talking about the dark night of the soul. And it goes like this. The dark night of the soul is about facing your fear and pain and going into it rather than avoiding it. What happens when you do that? It is not what you fear. There is an initial period in which you feel your fear, feel your pain, whatever it is. There is often a feeling of expansion with this, since you usually have shrunk back or contracted away from your pain, from your fear. There is a sense of relaxing and opening as your feeling nature expands into your whole experience. At some point, often sooner than you would expect, a shift happens. At that point, your experience changes to one of trust and peace, perhaps a sense of being carried, as in carried by a river, rather than fighting against the current. What has happened is that you have connected with the beings of light that are there to support you, to carry you. The pain may or may not go away, but your experience of it is different because you are in the light. The light is stronger and you are more attracted to it than your pain. You have entered the river of light and it is now cleansing and guiding you.
Thank you. I love that passage.
Yeah.
Me too. She gave it, and I remember having the full experience of every word that she was speaking, and it was so exquisite, and wanting to always be in that river of light, and the sense that there were endless beings there carrying me in that river, that it was a river of beings and love and light and joy.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes, I really like that. So we have been discussing a little bit a heavier subject, and I would like to discuss a lighter subject now, because Mary Magdalene also speaks about sexuality. And I'm wondering what she is talking about, what she speaks about regarding to sexuality.
Mary Magdalene is a great champion of sexuality as an expression of love, as a very human expression of love. And she says that there are basically two purposes for engaging in sexuality, and that they both are about bringing about new life. That the first is for bringing about manifesting a new being and giving birth to a child. And the second reason is giving birth to our higher spiritual selves. And that sexuality is, when it's engaged as a sacred practice, is an avenue for doing that. And she strongly recommends that we make that choice to engage sexuality as a sacred practice and go through the learning that involves, that there's real practices and learning of a different approach to sacred sexuality. And that's very much what she was focused on in the second book of Sublime Union. And her instruction for that book was, she said that I was already very, very familiar with sacred sexuality. I was already teaching sacred sexuality at that point and had been for many years. I had a partner who was new to sacred sexuality, so it was an interesting combination for the two of us. And she said what she wanted to do was for me to tell the story of what it was like to live this with a partner. She said there already are many resources for people who are wanting to learn sacred sexuality. There are many people teaching, there are books, videos, all sorts of things. So if someone wants to learn, they have access to a lot of resources. That's already available. She said, but what most people haven't made available is the story, the human story of what happens when you engage this, because people still feel like it's embarrassing or it's private or whatever. So that was my assignment, was to live this with my partner and really tell the story. So that's what I did in that book. I told the story of receiving Mary's messages and how, you know, I understood the messages. I told the story of engaging the practices very specifically and what occurred as we engaged them. And then I also told the story of how what was going on in my relationship at the time and how this played into the relationship. So it was a tapestry of all those things weaving together. Yeah. She was very clear. That's what we need, is people to tell the story. And it's part of getting beyond our shame around sexuality and the very latent idea that many of us still carry, that sexuality isn't normal, isn't as ordinary as talking about, you know, the meal you had for dinner last night.
Well, it's a wonderful book, Sublime Union. And it was actually the first book that I read. It has also gotten a lot of good comments about other spiritual leaders in the field. And one of those people was Christiane Northrup. I have the book right here. And Christiane Northrup is my hero. And I was really excited about her giving such a wonderful feedback about this book. She actually said, "Sublime Union is the book we've all been waiting for. I highly recommend this thrilling read." And or thrilling read, maybe that's the correct pronouncement.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful book for many, many women and men as well.
Thank you. And for those people who aren't familiar with Christiane Northrup, she's an MD in the United States and a best-selling author, and has written a number of books on women's health and
Yes.
supporting women's development. And through our connection with her endorsing the book, I got to, get to know her a little bit, and she's a delightful person.
Yes, her books are also translated in Dutch, and I think quite some people know her in Holland as well. So I was wondering, what would your number one advice be for people about how they can benefit from Mary's teaching if they have to start somewhere?
Well, I would definitely say start with reading the books. Well, there's even an easier way. If you sign up for my newsletter, which is you can do through the website, mercedeskirkel.com, you can receive the weekly newsletter and get messages from Mary and Yeshua on a weekly basis through the newsletter. So that's a great way to begin. And then if those speak to you, or if you're ready to dive in further, I say get the books. And for most people, I recommend the order that they were given, but some people start in whatever calls to them, and that seems perfect for them. So I say go with what you feel moved to. At this point, there's 2 books. I have a number of books in the wings that I'm hoping will be coming out before too long, but right now there are 2 books, Mary Magdalene Beckons and Sublime Union. And they're also described on the website, mercedeskirkel.com, and available through there or through Amazon. Mary Magdalene Beckons is currently translated into Spanish, and hopefully soon in Dutch. We'll see. So that's a wonderful next step. And then I teach online classes. The next kind of, if you want to be going in order, the next step, I think, is to take the class that's based on Mary Magdalene Beckons, and that's called the Magdalene Heart Path, which I teach as an online class, so people all over the world can take it.
The Magdalene Heart Path workshop is also a workshop that you will do in Holland this summer.
Yes, we'll be offering that this summer, definitely. And so that will be a live workshop rather than online, which I hope many people make use of. But the online format has been wonderful too for helping people to, to make it available. And the reason that course came about was because I also do private sessions with people. So that's another way people can make use of this work, through private sessions. I do channeled readings, or I also do just coaching where I'm bringing the wisdom that I've received through all of these years of channeling at this point to support people. But what happened in the early days was I was doing private sessions for people, and people would come to me and say, "Oh, I read your books. They were incredible. This is what I've been looking for. This is just the perfect thing." And then I would work with them, and I would try to support them in implementing the process that Mary was teaching. And I saw they didn't know how to do it. That they had a sense that this was really a valuable process, and they wanted to be doing it, but they didn't know how to make the bridge to actually bringing it into their own lives. And that's why I created the course. And what I've seen is the course has been super effective for actually launching people so that they can really make the practice their own. Yes, and I've had people take the course 2 or 3 times and, feel like they got more and more out of it each time. So it's one of those kinds of things that's very simple, and every time you do it, you go to a deeper level with it.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So that's another thing I offer, and now I'm starting to offer more courses. There is, in the fall, going to be a course on the sacred masculine, manifesting the sacred masculine. That will be an online course offered in October that I'm really looking forward to. And this is sort of the next phase of the development of Mary saying, okay, now the work has really been put forward about the key areas for completing the work of strengthening the feminine, now it's time to shift to the masculine and the sacred masculine. And I've had so many men who are really excited about this and thanking me for doing this work and wanting to know how can they get involved. And oh, this is just like food for my soul. I know, I'm so happy about that. So that's coming up this fall. And then I have started doing a course that's starting next year, 2018. It's going to be 2 courses. It's going to be an intermediate level course and then an advanced level course, which is developing our light bodies so that we can learn the practices for accessing the 4th dimension and manifesting, creating what we want in our lives and in the world in the 4th dimensional way. So that is, I'm offering that right now as one continuous course, but next year it's going to be two small, shorter courses. Which will be the intermediate and then the advanced course. And that's so exciting for me because I'm actually teaching my daily practices that I do when I meditate. And are the strongest, most valuable practices I've ever found. And I'm so, so happy to be sharing this with people and creating a community of people who are doing advanced spiritual work.
Yes.
And I'm actually seeing this as what used to be called a mystery school. Mary says it should not be called a mystery school anymore for 2 reasons. She said, first of all, there was a particular reason at that time why it was called a mystery school. It needed to be related to in that way in the past. She said it does not need to be related to that way anymore in our time. And in fact, that these things should not be mysteries. They should be openly accessible to everyone who wants access to them. And so she's been very, very clear about that. So I am calling it the Ascension School. And we're teaching the process of ascending into the 4th dimension, which right from the start, Mary said this has everything to do with uniting the masculine and feminine. And even this process that I'm teaching of the inner energy pathways for going into the 4th dimension are very sexual processes at the energetic level of uniting our inner masculine and feminine in a sexual way and a very strong and powerful and beautiful way.
Well, I've been attending your training in this way, and it has made so much change for me. It has given me so much change and transformation. It's absolutely something that I would recommend for people who want to have a deeper understanding of spirituality and a higher level of working with energy.
Yes, and the people who have come and who are engaged in this are people who've done a lot of spiritual work and have a very strong spiritual background. This really is an advanced training.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
I'm wondering, when you receive these beautiful messages from Mary Magdalene, what is touching you the most of her messages, and what has changed you the most personally?
The thing that touched me the most was her incredible love of God. She is so deeply, passionately in love with God. And when she communicates about it, I can feel it. And it is the most exquisite thing, the depth of her love of God. And she says quite clearly that for her, there's no difference between her love of Yeshua and her love of God, that they are the same thing. And so that's the other thing that has affected me personally so much, is to get to experience her love of Yeshua, the possibility of that kind of love. It's so profound and so everything. And the way that she loves him and sees him as God, absolutely. And knowing that I could have that too. Any of us could. And that to me is one of the most exquisite things I can imagine. And it has opened me through her love of Yeshua, has opened me to have a profound love of Yeshua and my own relationship with him, which I treasure. And before Mary coming to me, I never in a million years would have thought that I would be a person saying that. And also knowing that I can have this love with another human as well, this love in the form of a connection with a sacred partner is absolutely exquisite to me.
I would like to invite you to read your most favorite sentences of Mary Magdalene's messages.
I would be very happy to do that. And there's two that I go back and forth when I get asked this question. And I'm going to read the second, which was the very ending of the very last message she gave in the original initial series of messages that became Mary Magdalene Beckons. And these messages were all given over a 1-month period where she came to me every day and gave a new chapter day by day. So this was the very end. She actually finished her whole communication that she wanted to make after the 22nd message. When I say that, it always sounds like, okay, the 22nd Psalm or whatever. But after the 22nd message, I knew very well that she had finished, that she was complete with everything she had wanted to say. And I was feeling very sad. I did not want to let go of this exquisite experience of her coming to me every day and giving me a new amazing gem day by day. So the next day I came back hoping that she might still have something more, even though I sensed that wasn't the case. And I sat down and tuned into her, and it was like she had breathed this deep sigh of relief that it was done. She had done what she came to do. And now I had a sense that she could just talk to me almost like friend to friend, sister to sister. And it turned out she gave 3 more messages. The first message was the other one that I love to read so much, where she talked about her love of Yeshua. And it is such an exquisite message. So that was the first one that she gave. On the second day, she gave a more detailed message about sexuality because she knew we were all dying to hear more about sexuality. And so she went into it further. Even back then, I knew that she was going to give a whole book, that she had way too much to say to bring it all in. But she wanted to give us a little bit more because she knew we were hungry. And then the third message was what I called her call to action. It reminded me of her having the passion of someone like Joan of Arc, rousing the troops, saying, this is what we're doing, go forward and let it be done. And she was talking about, what do we do now that we have all this information? You know, what do we choose to do? And wanting to inspire us to make every use of this lifetime for spiritual transformation and spiritual growth. So this was the very, very ending of that message, which I dearly love. And these are her words. I and so many others are calling to you to join us in the river of love that flows from your heart. It is a place of great joy and love and peace. It is the place of connection with God, of growing in God, of being guided by God, of living in God, of living as God. of knowing all as God. I do not know of anything more wonderful than that. I call to you and invite you to join us in this great and wondrous process of living in and as God. I do this because I love you, because I know you as God, and I am not different from you. This is your destiny too.
I think that we have come to a closing of the interview as well. These were very beautiful words. And I want to thank you for this interview. Please tell our audience where they can find more about you and your work.
Absolutely. The best place is my website, mercedeskirkel.com, MERCEDESKIRKEL.com. And I describe all my different offerings on the website, and including there's a calendar of events there. And the one that I didn't mention is that in the summer, I come to the south of France and do a Magdalene initiation in France. And I love this area so much. It's where I believe Mary and Yeshua both lived, and their energy there is so strong. And these are very, very transformational retreats and just a beautiful, beautiful experience. So anyone who feels the call, please come join us in France.
Yes, and you're doing that this year and next year.
Yes. And then other events too, you know, in the Netherlands and in the future in more places, in Europe and in other places. So find out about the website.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. And if anybody wants to know more about Maryam Agency and about what we do for Mercedes Kirkel, you can look at our website, maryamagency.com. Thank you very much, Mercedes. It has been a wonderful interview, and I think we can all learn very much from you and from the teachings of Mary Magdalene.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.